working our way clockwise across what is Amtrak, no, NJ Transit's line now to Atlantic City, the Conrail line down through Winslow, on down Tuckahoe, which is also used by K&A Seashore lines. We'll take a detour over the CNJ from Winslow down to Bridgeton and then over to into the far deepest parts of South Jersey. It doesn't go to Morristown anymore, but we'll follow it out to Newport. And we'll look at the Elmer line before it was torn up, over to the Salem branch, and then finish off over on the Deepwater Secondary. So we're going to start off on the Delaware Bridge. I think this was a chapter trip. We took a boat ride out in the Delaware, and this is an Amtrak train crossing the Delaware Bridge. And given that Amtrak ran their engines on the east end, this would be a train going into New Jersey, perhaps. Here's the Delaware Bridge. This is from the Philly side looking towards New Jersey. Transit train coming into Philadelphia. I actually flew my drone for this, the scariest drone flight I ever did, because I launched from the New Jersey side and from the other side, the north side of the bridge. Those wires can be nasty for a drone. And boy, I had to fly way up to clear the wires, but and then way across the Delaware. It was a pretty scary flight. This is Amtrak back when they came into Atlantic City, coming across the Delaware Bridge. One of the ex-Toronto Go Transit Jeep 40s on the point. And this is one of the earliest Amtrak test trains coming across the bridge, a single car pushing to Atlantic City. Conrail light engines coming across the bridge. And there's the Delaware Bridge in the background. We're in Delaware now. That's the river line, the light rail, diesel-powered light rail line, approaching the Pennsauken Transit Center. Now in New Jersey, the business train going past Hatch Interlocking. This was the train they ran as a precursor to the light rail line. It ran up to Trenton, up from Camden, up through Florence and Roebling and that stuff. This is Cove. This is where everybody hangs out at Cove. Heritage unit on the point, the Virginian, Norfolk Southern train coming down. Betsy Ross Bridge in the background. You can see it the best, but just in front of that would be the Delaware Bridge. And another Heritage unit at Cove, the Erie unit. And the light rail passing a Norfolk Southern train at Cove. Light rail train approaching 36th Street in Pennsauken. Camden, the Pavonia Yard right there. And another light rail train crossing over Cooper River in Camden. The other bridge over the Delaware we're going to look at is the Ben Franklin Bridge, which carries PATCO across. Here's a PATCO train with the new cars coming across the bridge into Camden. And here's a set of the older cars coming across. This walkway is a pretty nice walkway. In the spring and fall when the weather is moderate. You don't want to be doing this. You don't want to be doing this in the dead of winter when it's freezing cold, or in the summer when it's scorching hot. And another set of older cars coming across. These are all from the walkway. This is where the other bridge tower, where the bridge towers are. There's the walkway goes out over the tracks. You can shoot trains from there. We're in Camden, one of the older, this is the last day the old cars ran, as a matter of fact. PATCO publicized the last day of the old cars. You got Washington crossing the Delaware on the mural in the background there. And we're at Lindenwold now. Old cars sitting there at night. This is on the way to Lindenwold. Slightly out of order here. Rainy day. This was the day the last day of the old cars. But this is a set of the new cars coming by. There's been at least 2 tours of the PATCO shops that I've been on. I think that the West Jersey chapter ran both of those. This is the first one. Back in what, I guess the 90s, this was run. With the older cars still in service. And then the most recent one with the newer cars. And this is the first trip with the old cars again. Back over to Camden, where the River Line and PATCO intersect. We're at City Hall in Camden. They're in the background at the Rand Transportation Center. And we'll take the River Line all the way to its terminus out by the Battleship, New Jersey, down on the waterfront. Ben Franklin Bridge in the background. The train had just crossed that a few minutes earlier. And I guess that's Campbell Field there, which I guess is gone now. I haven't been up there since they were threatening to tear it down. I believe it's gone though. Back to the Atlantic City line, Berlin, the oldest existing station in New Jersey. Train coming back up from Atlantic City. And this is just before the line was shut down for the big PTC shutdown a couple years ago. Train coming up from Atlantic City going through Berlin. Continuing along, we're at Winslow Junction, back when Amtrak ran through there. And when Amtrak rebuilt the line, they took down all the old PRR position light signals and threw them in a dumpster at Winslow into a gondola. And word kind of got out to the rail fans that if anybody wanted to pick through the junk pile, they were more than welcome to. So here's my brother looking over the junk pile to see what kind of stuff we can retrieve. That Penzie position light in the foreground, laying down there on its face, that came home with us. As did these 2 beaded grade crossing signs, with the intent being to make one good one out of the 2 bad ones, fill in the missing beads on one of the 2 signs. This is unusual. This is an Amtrak ALP 44 electric locomotive leaving the train with no wires. This was the Atlantic City Express Service ACES train that was paid for by the casinos. From New York City to Atlantic City, electric from New York. I guess they turned the power off in Newark. And then there's diesel on the back end that would power it the rest of the way. Here's the ACES coming back. This was the last stand for New Jersey Transit's P40 locomotives. They were leased for this service, once again going through Winslow. My favorite spot to shoot trains on the Atlantic City line is Delilah Road, with the Atlantic City skyline sort of in the background. Amtrak train coming out. And in the early days of Amtrak, which would be around 1989, I guess, they actually promoted the service with these signs along the Atlantic City Expressway. Out here in the meadows, a branch took off into Pleasantville that was served by Shore Fast Line, now served by Southern Railroad of New Jersey. I'm sort of embarrassed to say I have not done this in the SRNJ days. Last time I was down here doing this was back when Shore Fast Line ran the service. And then finally, leaving the meadows, we arrive in Atlantic City, just across the lagoon there. Amtrak train coming out of Atlantic City here. We'll now switch over to the somewhat parallel line that Conrail runs. Here you see a Conrail train coming down through Richland. The tracks overhead are the old line from Newfield down to the shore, the old third rail service line. I believe these piers are now gone. Once again, I'm not positive about that. But Richland, of course, now is the home of Cape May Seashore Lines. They run their trains out of here now. WI Tower from Newfield now sits along the tracks here in Richland. Here you see one of the Christmas trains getting ready to go. And same spot at night. And then late last year, CSX ran a train down to Tuckahoe to deliver some storage tank cars to the CMSL, and here it is going by WI Tower in Richland. Continuing along, Cape May Seashore Lines train passing the Weymouth Township Municipal Building. This is that stretch of road that parallels the railroad for about 7 miles. A lot of shots along here. We arrive at Tuckahoe. And this is a daytime train, but of course, during Christmas season, they run them at night too. And here is Ron Bale's wife's favorite photo, CMSL passing Tuckahoe at night. And I got this dusk shot there one time while waiting for the train. And here comes that CSX oil train we saw a few frames ago down past the tower. Don't like the modern power? Well, then how about a Pennsylvania Railroad Jeep going by the tower? The United Railroad Historical Society of New Jersey has had a few railroad days down at Tuckahoe. During one of them, we did this night photo here. We kind of recreated a transfer train. You got RDCs, Bud cars, coming off the line to Ocean City, doing a cross-platform transfer to a mainline train from Cape May, powered by the Pennsy Jeep. And here are the Buds with Mike Reeves. I believe it's a New Yorker park there. And down by the section house, got this scene here. Trains heading to Beasley's Point from Tuckahoe, going the Ocean City line, they would go across this bridge at Petersburg. This is back when the Beasley's Point station was running. Those tank cars aren't going to storage. They're going down to the power plant to be used for fuel. Other line goes down to Cape May. And we'll start off in Cape May Courthouse. Southern Railroad of New Jersey was down there switching the lumber yard when I was down there one day using this ex-Lehigh Valley C420, which is now up in service up on the Delaware Lackawanna out of Scranton, still in Lehigh Valley paint. We come to Wildwood Junction, where the branch of Wildwood took off, obviously. This depot was torn down just about a year ago now. Here we see the Cape May Seashore Lines RDCs going by, going by the station. Down at Cold Spring Village, URHS's Lehigh Valley F units were there for a photo day, going by BD Tower that used to be at Woodbine Junction. And here's BD at night with the ex-Pennsylvania Reading Seashore Lines RDCs going parked in front. Down to the Canal Bridge. Little blast in the past, a PRSL RDC on home rails. And this next shot I still owe Dave a print of. This is the RDC's crossing the canal bridge at night. And then a daytime view from roughly the same angle with some wildflowers in the foreground. We're going to head on back up to Winslow Junction now and check out Southern Railroad of New Jersey. Here's their ex-Bessemer and Lake Erie F unit, 727. We saw the 2884 earlier in this show when it worked for Shore Fast Line, sitting back there and now in the Jersey Central inspired red paint scheme. You'll see the 727 again later in the show in different paint. I was there one day and the 414 was there, and it decided it wanted to take two different tracks at once. So the Washington Terminal RS1 was brought out to couple onto it and try to convince it that it needed to only go one direction at a time. Was there one night and did this shot of their MLW painted in the O&W colors, New York, Ontario, and Western. That's my brother pretending he knows what he's doing, getting onto the locomotive there. And they had the big Railfan Day down there back in the 90s. Here's the 414 and SRNJ 100 side by side coming up out of Winslow Junction. And a part of that Railfan Day also included this 3-cab unit lineup. Jersey Central F3, SRNJ 727, now in Rock Island inspired paint, no longer in the Bessemer paint, and New York Central FA 1111. Going back a few years at Winslow Junction, here's Shore Fast Line's Power when they were working out of there, spending the night. And the Leaning Tower of Winslow. Ever since I was a small kid, I was fascinated by this water tank. We'd come to Winslow once a year maybe to check things out. And the water tank would be leaning a little more and a little more and a little more each year. And it is no longer there. Heading down the CNJ from Winslow Junction, this is the bridge you can see from US 322, which would no longer support the weight of this locomotive. Here we see a business train that SRNJ ran back in the 90s. 2884 in the lead, Nick Oreo, engineer in the cab. And continuing on the CNJ, we come into Landisville. Here's the 727, now back in its Bessemer paint during a Railfan photography event, which had a major thunderstorm blow through. You can see the ominous sky behind it there. Continuing on the CNJ, we come into Vineland. Here we see Winchester and Western, which now operates on the CNJ from Bridgeton to Vineland, going past the neon sign of the Vineland Municipal Electric Plant. And just west of Vineland, it crosses over the Morris River. And we'll go back a few, this is back in the 90s, this shot here. We'll go back even further to when Conrail ran the line. Here it is crossing the Morris River, heading east. The old Franklin Feeds plant, which is now gone. This is a Winchester and Western train going by there one night. And this is near Rosenhain. Sand cars trailing the power. And then we're going to jump back slightly out of sequence here, apparently. Back to Franklin Feeds near Norma, the daytime train heading towards Vineland and ultimately to Millville. We arrive in Bridgeton, historic Bridgeton, according to the bridge. The bridge over New Jersey Route 77. And that brings us to the yard in Bridgeton, the headquarters for Winchester and Western's New Jersey division. And this is the Winchester and Western all-service gas station. The locomotive underneath the canopy was a former ALCO, I believe. It was cut down into a slug by Conrail, and then Winchester and Western deslugified it and put a cab back on it and turned it back into a locomotive. New Jersey traffic, I forget what the occasion was, but New Jersey Transit ran a trip. I guess it was a shipper's trip for the Winchester and Western, but they ran their private car, their business car rather, down to Bridgeton. That's the New Jersey Transit business car on the left. The business car on the right is Winchester and Western's office. And this is back in the shop area, the sand tower. Very cool high nose SD locomotive there, which they keep threatening to chop the nose on. I hope they never do. But then again, I don't have to run it. This is at the far end of the Bridgeton yard. This is where the CNJ crossed the PRSL coming down from Glassboro through Elmer to Bridgeton. Just beyond this, a little line takes off, goes up to Seabrook. And for a year or two or three, this was operated by a little railroad called the Jersey Southern, which used this ALCO to switch. Cool little operation. Eventually, Jersey Southern lost the contract. Winchester and Western, since they were so close by, got the contract. And here we see a Winchester and Western train doing the switching up there. Jersey Central continues on through Bridgeton, curls around and heads down towards Morristown. It only goes as far as roughly Newport now. There used to be a line that went down to Bayside as well, but there was a ferry across the Delaware into the state of Delaware. But if you follow it on down, you come into the sand pits down there around Dividing Creek and Newport. And this shot here was taken on one of the final days that Winchester and Western's engineer Bruce Matson was running. He retired, long time fixture on the Winchester and Western. Back before they painted their locomotives, here we have all black locomotives going through the old sand plant. This is all closed down and abandoned now. This part here is there's another plant just geographically east of here that they still serve. And here's the plant from the air. Drones are great. You just need a few feet of elevation to see a lot more than you can see from ground level. We're going to take a little diversion now. We're going to leave the main lines of New Jersey, and we're going to hit some tiny railroads here. This was a chapter trip way back when. We went to Camp Hiawatha for the Hiawatha Shoreline Railroad. We spent an evening here riding their trains. And they've got a doodle bug and a turntable. here's some chapter members riding along. And the other tiny railroad we're going to visit is the railroad that Bob Stanton rescued, the Riverview and Woodside Railroad, which I guess ran over in Pennsville at one time, in Riverview Park. Anyhow, Bob rescued some of the equipment, some of the track, and put it in his backyard near Woodstown. This is also a chapter picnic, I believe, at Bob's house. Bob has since moved to Florida. I'm not sure what the status of his railroad is. He also has this German-built steam locomotive.
Bob's back in New Jersey, Steve.
He is. Okay, that's good to hear. Railroad's still there? Do you know, Dave?
I don't know what the status is. Bob's I think Bob's around 95 or 96, and I hear from him through the he looks at the emails every day and he responds about the videos.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad to hear he's still interested. Excellent.
Yeah.
We're going to head back up to Woodbury at this point, where the line's all split, and we're going to find a Norfolk Southern train sitting in the siding up there, led by one of their heritage units. This one painted for the Central of Georgia. Another heritage unit was there, the Norfolk and Western Heritage Unit, and here it is meeting the train coming up from Millville. And now we're going to head on down towards Millville. Here's a Norfolk Southern Operation Lifesaver train going by the depot at Sewell. The Conrail business train going by the station at Sewell. Back in 96. And CSX going by Sewell. This is all Conrail shared assets now. Conrail shared assets is owned half and half by Norfolk Southern and CSX. It has none of its own power. All of the power it uses comes from either Norfolk Southern or CSX. And a train going by the restored depot in Glassboro. We're in North Vineland, past Serene Custard. In Vineland, they built a connection between the old Jersey Central and the old PRSL. There was never a connection here before. This allowed Conrail originally to serve Bridgeton using the line to Vineland rather than using the line through Elmer, and that meant the demise of the Elmer line. And here's CSX power on a Conrail shared assets train heading north, rattling across the CNJ on the old PRSL at Landis in Vineland. The somewhat modern passenger depot for PRSL commuters in Vineland, right on Landis Avenue. This is no longer there. The concrete slab is still there. The depot itself is gone. Down in the Millville Yard, we see some Winchester and Western power spending the night. Once again, that's my brother up in the cab, pretending he knows what he's doing, posing as an engineer, and another friend of mine on the ground with the lantern, sort of making a in-service scene of coupling up locomotives, even though A, nothing was moving, and B, we probably weren't supposed to be there, but we won't discuss that. Conrail actually back then, when I was shooting this, and Winchester and Western shared the track from Vineland on down into the Millville Yard, and some days their trains ran back to back. No, this is not a head-on collision about ready to happen. Because of the way the connection is configured at Vineland, Winchester and Western needs to run engines on both ends of their trains. This is the back end of a Winchester and Western train heading off to the right into Millville Yard with the Conrail local right on their heels, both trains moving. Down in Millville, here's Winchester and Western going by the old Wheaton glass plant. This is high on my list of things to shoot with a drone one of these days. I got to get down there and do some stuff here. And then down below Millville, Winchester and Western switching out Durand glass. And there's that cool high nose SD again doing some switching. Back up to Glassboro, we're going to hop onto the Elmer line, the line through Elmer down to Bridgeton, which is no longer there. This was my hometown railroad for many, many years when I lived just outside of Elmer. Here you see a train heading through Aura, through the cemetery. Back when the line was there, it was torn up in the early 80s. I didn't know what I was doing with the camera very much, so a lot of this stuff isn't really very good. But here we see a early Conrail train with Penn Central power, Jeep 30 in the lead, crossing over US 40 in downtown Elmer. The line was torn up, as I said, in the early 80s, and we decided we wanted to rescue some of the stuff off the line. So we approached the contractor who was scrapping the line and said, we'd like to get some signs and stuff. What do we need to do? And he said, $50, take all you want. So we gave him $50 and we took all we wanted. Here we are getting a whistle post out of the ground in Elmer. I'll let you know, that whistle post is as long again below the ground as it is above the ground, and there's a base on the bottom of it. So you got to dig a pretty decent and deep hole to get these things out. And then they weigh a ton once you do that amount. Here I am trying to dig out a milepost, which we did successfully dig out, by the way. There was a huge crossbuck in Elmer, one of the big lookout for the locomotive crossbucks that we wanted. And no idea how we were going to get it down off its post. But we told the contractor we were interested in that sign. And we went back to get it one night, and he had taken it off the post and just laid it on the ground for us. We just loaded it into the truck and took it home. Heading down towards Bridgeton, this is actually like July 1976. Conrail is brand new at this point. And somehow this Jeep got painted in the Conrail blue really early, and somehow it got assigned to the Elmer branch. I don't have much else from this line here. As I said, it was torn up in the early 80s. I didn't know what I was doing with the camera back then. Most of my stuff is fairly awful from this era. As I'm scanning more old stuff and finding more old stuff, I might have to revisit this at some point. But now we're going to hop over to the Salem branch, and we're going to pick it up just below Swedesboro, where the Salem branch crosses Oldman's Creek between Swedesboro and Woodstown. This line has been completely rehabbed. You could run a Metroliner on it now. It's got really good rail. Only problem is it has no trains. When this train here, this one in the photo, crossed this bridge, this was the first train over the bridge in about 3 or 4 years. And the bridge had just been rebuilt. This was the first train on the bridge. Here's the same bridge on a better day with a better sun angle. The line goes all the way to Salem. It hasn't seen a train beyond Woodstown in probably 5 years, other than one demonstration train they ran down to the port almost 2 years ago now. And Woodstown itself only sees about a dozen trains a year, mostly in the spring when the Farmers Exchange in Woodstown is getting fertilizer in. Here's the same spot, but the older bridge. For a while, the F3s owned by the Anthracite Railroad Historical Society and the Tri-State Railway Historical Society were the freight power on the branch. It was amazing to see 2 CNJ painted F3s in freight service. It's pretty darn cool. Here's Southern Railroad of New Jersey approaching Woodstown. Because of the way the switch is configured at Farmers Exchange, it's easier for them to put engines on both ends and run down with 2 engines for 1 freight car. Same spot, just looking the other direction for their side of the driveway there. Train coming north out of Woodstown. Off the Route 45 bridge in Woodstown, here are the F3s coming into town. And now we're in Woodstown at the end of dead end Falwell Road. This is the predecessor to Southern Railroad of New Jersey, the West Jersey Railroad. They were the contract operator. The branch is county owned. The county owns it, and the official name is the Salem County Short Line. Each operator that has come in has given it its own name. And this was when West Jersey had it, West Jersey being part of a conglomerate owned by Pioneer Rail Corp with several different short lines. SRNJ in Woodstown one night. And then one night they brought in this cool potash car. No graffiti, nice red color. So I had to go out and get a night shot of that sitting there in Woodstown one night. Here you see them switching the Farmers Exchange in Woodstown. Like I said, they use 2 engines because of the way the switch is configured. One engine, the 102, sitting out on the main line. The other locomotive is pushing the car back into Farmers Exchange. This is in Woodstown. Farmers Exchange is in the background on the left. This is when the privately owned RDC was running on the branch, owned by, among others, a handful of West Jersey chapter members. Still in Woodstown, this is, once again, the train has engines on both ends. This is a train getting ready to go north. This would be the 100 will be leading the train going back north. From here, the line to Salem, like I said, hasn't been used other than 1 train in at least 5 years. For a while, SRNJ found themselves power short. And they leased this Conrail switcher for a couple of weeks. Here it is crossing over East Lake Road outside of Woodstown. And here's a West Jersey Railroad train crossing over Woodstown Alloway Road. The signals on the right of the train there, those aren't signals to control movement. They're just signals to let the crew know the circuitry is working at the grade crossing. It blinks, and I just happened to catch it with the light blinked off. Prior to West Jersey Railroad was West Jersey Short Line as the operator. They used RS3Ms. Here we see engineer Tony McCree leading the train to Salem. I was at Alloway Junction shooting this train coming from Salem with one of the ex-Bessemer F units leading. This one painted in O&W paint. Ready to take a picture. I hear screech, bam. And this truck hit the side of the second F unit. Barely hit the brakes. It just sort of ran into the side of it. And I clicked the shutter just after the collision. We came back to the spot later in the day to shoot the train going back to Salem, and there was some lawyer person there for the for the truck driver. And we mentioned to him we had been there when it happened, and he was not too pleased to find out that there were 3 witnesses who could testify that the train was blowing its horn, did everything proper, and the truck never really hit its brakes till it ran to the side of the train. Same location without a wrecked truck. This is West Jersey Railroad, a couple of Alcos heading from Salem to Woodstown. and now we're in Salem. A couple of Alcos on the causeway coming into Salem Yard. Just above there is Mannington Mills. That's where they kept their locomotives. Here we see one of the Bessemer F7s and painted for the Rock Island, sort of Rock Island. 727 coming down. The F3s by this point are in storage. Whatever they were making at Mannington Mills kind of sprayed onto the locomotives. It's not snow. This is like July, but it's just powder from the mill. Here's a train working Mannington Mills with the O&W F7 in the lead. This is on the Glass House branch that comes off just off the causeway. This is a train coming back from the port. This was the only train to run down there in the past 5 years or so. This was a demonstration train sent down there by the on behalf of the freeholders of Salem County, who were promoting the port as a place to ship your stuff. The port is open, ready for business. Come on down, transload your stuff from boat to train. We'll take care of it. Not much has happened since then. This is the Glass House branch before they rebuilt it. West Jersey train coming up from the port. And here's the F units working Anchor Glass, which is located on the Glass House branch. The port is just beyond the factory here. And this was that freeholder train. They gave everybody a ride on the locomotive over the new trackage down to the port. And then we're going to go to the last of our lines over to the line down to Deepwater, which comes off at Woodbury. At Paulsboro was this great old A-frame swing bridge. Unfortunately, a train picked the points leading onto the bridge one day, and derailed and pretty much took it out. It's been since replaced by a new movable bridge. Below that is the movable bridge at Bridgeport. Northbound train going across it. This bridge is still there, still movable. Train coming down from Paulsboro. Or possibly, no, it might even be heading north. Along the way, we come to SMS in Bridgeport. CSX brought their 3 tribute locomotives for display there one time, a year or so ago. Well, no, it wasn't last year. Last year was a waste. Had to be the year before. Veterans unit. First responders and somebody else gets a tribute engine. Here's a couple of SMS's Baldwins during one of the early Railfan days down there in the early 90s, I believe this was. And their Xtrona AS616, biggest engine on the roster. Came from the Trona Railway out in California. They've been using GEs lately. They're still committed to Baldwins, but the GEs showed up and they ran good, so they were using them. Here's an ex Santa Fe GE that they've been using recently. And they got this GE from the Delaware coastline. It was painted this really cool blue color. And so the railroad decided they would put a temporary Conrail tribute paint scheme on it. So they put the double white stripes down the side, and they used the proper font on both the cab numbers underneath the cab window and the number boards, and really gave it a real Conrail look and feel. So I got this accidentally one day, and we made arrangements to go back and do some night shots there that night. And here we see the up in the cab is Brian Murray, the person in charge of Bridgeport, of the Bridgeport operation in Pure Land. If you look carefully, you can see the DCLR reporting marks underneath the 1961 there. And my friend Bob Baker is posing as a brakeman on the steps there. And then while we were there that night, we did this shot of the Santa Fe unit as well. And here's one of their Baldwins. It's been painted for the Pennsylvania. It's actually a Pennsylvania Railroad Baldwin back in its original paint. And this one, I understand, has been getting used quite a bit in recently. And then here's the Pennsylvania Baldwin with a Baldwin painted for the Baltimore and Ohio. It is actually an ex-U.S. Navy Baldwin, but the Navy does not allow engines they donate or sell to retain the Navy paint scheme, which is just a bland yellow. So they just, I believe it went through URHS first before it came to SMS, and it was painted for Baltimore and Ohio. And here's the railroad's modern shop in Bridgeport. Continuing along, we come to Pennsgrove, a Conrail shared assets train with CSX Power leading it, going by the Colonial Hotel, which is no longer open. And then the Deepwater Generating Station still gets coal trains down there, and they run them at night. And one night, the train left empty out of Deepwater with Norfolk Southern's Reading Company Heritage Unit on the point. This was like 2 in the morning. And then at the far end of the line was the Atlantic City Electric Generating Station. This is now closed. There's another, it was to the left of this photo here. The current generating station is off to the right in this photo. But we did a photography day down there towards the end. I guess it was the last week Atlantic City Electric Station was open. And the employees, we asked for a tour. They said, what the heck, they can't fire us. We're all getting laid off anyhow. So they let us come out, and they posed their 2 engines for us between the 2 bridges. We all got a chance to run the engines using the belt packs. It was kind of cool. So I'm going to wrap this up here with a couple of stories. The first story is one night we had set up at the bridge at Bridgeport, the movable bridge. We knew CSX was bringing a unit ethanol train out of Pure Land, and we decided we wanted to shoot it. So we set up at the Bridgeport Bridge, got a photo. The train pulled up, stopped, and the conductor got off. And we're like, okay, this is interesting. What's going to happen? The conductor walks over to us and says, any of you guys got a cigarette? And we're like, no, sorry. He says, oh, I said, I really need a cigarette. We said, tell you what, we said, we want to get a shot of your train up at Woodbury as well. If you drag your heels a little bit and take your time getting to Woodbury, and let us get our shot, we'll buy you cigarettes on the way to Woodbury. He said, okay, deal. So we raced to Wawa, grabbed some cigarettes, raced to Woodbury, got set up, and here's our conductor ready to get off at Woodbury to pick up his cigarettes. And then the last story I want to tell is I was at Winslow Junction one day shooting some stuff, and Conrail went overhead, heading towards Beasley's Point. And if you look in the trees there, that second unit is painted for the U.S. Olympic bicycle trials, which were being held in Altoona, which is a huge Conrail town. And I said, hey, how about that bicycle unit, that's going to go down to Beasley's Point. It'll be leading coming back. I'm going to chase this train and and shoot it when it's coming back with the bicycle unit in the lead. So off I went chasing the train. It got down to the long siding there around Dorothy, and left all its hopper cars in the siding and continued light engines down to Beasley's Point. And I went from grade crossing to grade crossing and photographed it and shot it and watched it go by. Well, anyhow, at one of the last grade crossings before it got to Beasley's Point, the train pulls up and stops, and the conductor got off. And he walks over to me and he says, "We need some coffee." He said, "Drive me over to Wawa and we'll let you run the engines." Well, okay, deal. So I drove him to Wawa. He picked up his coffee, drove him back to the engines. He said, "Okay, meet us at the gate into the power plant." So I drove down to the gate of the power plant. The light engines pulled up. I hopped onto the 6461, the lead engine in the photo here. They put me into the engineer's seat, and I ran it into the plant. Got to the end of the track. We stopped. The conductor got off to do some paperwork. While he was doing that, me and the engineer switched ends, got into the Olympic unit, and I ran the Olympic unit back out of the plant. So that was kind of cool. And then I hung around, and here's the Olympic unit leading the train out of Beasley's Point. And then the shot I really wanted was crossing the bridge at Petersburg. And here's the shot that I got. So that was an interesting day. And then the final thing I'm going to show is the last photo I've taken in South Jersey up to this point. Just before New Year's Eve, Norfolk Southern had a coal train coming out of Deepwater Generating, and the lead locomotive was the Wabash Heritage Unit. So I shot that over near Pedricktown on its way heading north. And with that, I am going to wrap up this show. So there you go.
Well, Steve, thank you very much, and thank you, everybody. Give you a little applause myself. Yeah,
Thank you.
Give them a thumbs up. If you'd like to unmute yourselves to ask any questions, or if you want to head off, or if you want to talk or chat for a few minutes, I think you can unmute yourselves at this point. And if anybody's got any questions for Steve, or wish to talk to Steve about anything, go right ahead.
I had a question. What do you do for your night photography for the flash setup? I've never really done that. It looks like you have a pretty pro thing going on.
It's basically just 3 or 4 studio strobes that I set up. Everybody thinks the lights are real powerful. The actual key is the high ISOs of the cameras. All you got to do is put a few photons out there for the camera to find them, because you're shooting at like ISO 2000 in some cases. Winston Link did the same thing. He used 60 flash bulbs. If I use all 4 of my lights and use all 4 at full power, which I seldom do, the power of all 4 lights would be less than 2 of Link's flash bulbs.
If you're interested in anything, an easier thing is if you have a more modern camera, the Android night sight makes it super easy to do like brain dead night photos. You don't need any flash. You just need a little bit of light. It's like a very high ISO, but it doesn't look grainy.
Anybody else out there?
Yes. Steve, what resolution camera are you using these days?
I'm using the Nikon D750. I'm not sure how many megapixels it puts out, but I got it because it has it's for night work. There's like no noise up to ISO 10,000. It's just awesome for night work. I can hand hold, like for streetcar shots on, we just use street lights and stuff like that. I can hand hold it at night.
Wow. I'm impressed. I have enjoyed these pictures you've had. Even the old ones are pretty damn good considering.
Oh, thanks.
I have a comment. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Okay, I have the answer to the question of the engine change on the ACES train. They built a siding off of track 4 at Frankfurt Junction. So the train ran out of New York, powered by the 44, with the engineer in the P40. And they got onto the siding, pulled off of track 4 onto the siding. The engineer started up the diesel engine, walked on the ground to the other end of the train, used the electric as the cab car, took down the pantograph, and when they got track authority, went down to Atlantic City.
Okay, I had heard that to save money from Amtrak, they were turning the juice off at Newark right after they got out of the tunnel. But it could be that it would make more sense to take the pan down at Frankfurt Junction.
I rode it till late in the career, and they were using electric all the way to Frankfurt Junction.
Okay.
I did have another question. What's the procedure for getting photos at SMS and Pure Land these days? Because I remember for a while they were kind of no bueno.
No, they're good. Right now they're not giving out cab rides because of COVID, but you can still get on the property. Just go there. They start at 7 in the morning, so you got to get there early to see them because they can get lost back at the interchange for a couple of hours sometimes. But go there, pull up to the gate. If the gate's locked, call the phone number on the fence. They'll let you in, sign a release, and you're good. Once the COVID thing gets over with, they'll probably go back to allowing cab riders again, which is the easiest way to photograph the places because you can't get to a lot of places by car or foot. Easiest way to get photos is to ride with the crew and get off at different spots to take pictures.
I'd like to add a little something about that ACES question that some people answered. I seem to remember fire at Croydon because they were actually turning off the electric and firing up the GE at Newark, like it was being described. And apparently that's why it got stopped. I don't know how long they were doing it, but something happened with the GE and it actually started burning up the catenary. And I don't remember exactly how it was started, but I do remember that was the case. They were actually shutting off the ALP once they got out of Penn Station.
Anything else for Steve or anybody in the audience? Steve, I'd join again on overseeing that program.